The 6.5 is back, and Daniel, we are talking about two really awesome topics here. This is one interview in a series of serverless interviews. We kicked it off with Holly Mesrobian. She runs VP of Server Compute, really kind of a broad-based look at serverless compute, talking Lambda, ECS, Fargate, and event-driven architectures. And then Stephen and Keith did some double clicks on there about developing future-proof integration strategies, and then even touched on security. But here we are, Dan, talking about our favorite topic, generative AI, and how it relates to serverless.
Pat, you knew we'd end up here, right? You can't do a series of 5 or 6 podcasts in the tech industry now and not have some, reversion to the mean, as I would like to say. And right now there's only one topic that everybody on the planet cares about, and that is
AI or generative AI, right?
I don't know. I just wanted to see what you'd come up with. At least you didn't say something silly.
Exactly. So, hey, let's introduce our guests, Uma and Eric, first time 6.5 guests. Welcome. Let's talk Gen AI and serverless.
All right. Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you both here. And, the preamble, jokes aside, right? It has been a really, really exciting 18, 19 months since that November, October moment in 22 when ChatGPT dropped, and it sort of just changed the whole trajectory. Pat and I love to talk about, 4+ decades of AI, 4+ decades of algorithms. AWS has been a leader in machine learning, some of the innovations around SageMaker, the work you've been doing with your partners. It's not necessarily new, but it's been an inflection. It's been a significant transformation that's gone on. And so we've been covering it closely. We've been talking to your peers. We've been talking to other companies in your space. We've been talking to your customers. And of course, we've been opining on our own, but hearing from you both, and Eric, I'd love to start with you. We are in this period now where it's all about the adoption. Everyone's saying, okay,
Yeah.
Good to see all this CapEx investment. Great to see all these companies building data centers. But we want to talk about people using generative AI. Where you sit in AWS, you're looking at organizations that are using it, they're adopting it. What are some of the trends you're seeing as this is starting to take place?
Oh man, we could go just on this one question. We could go for hours, but I'll try to keep it limited. I told Uma she would have her chance to talk as well. So, we. By the way, I'm Eric. That's Uma over there. If you're confused, so yeah,
it's all in the lower third, my friend.
That's right. That's all right. There you go. So the trends we're seeing, like I said, there's a ton of them, but I'll kind of pull out some of the ones that kind of raise to the top for me, or the ones that I'm seeing. One, is the obvious. It's the domain specific information, right? With the invention or the introduction of these LLMs, these large language models that kind of do everything, right? We look at them and say, that's going to do everything I ask it to. But it doesn't have some of the domain-specific information that folks are looking for, and that's what companies want to kind of capitalize on. They want to say, look, we're going to give you the power of LLM, but we're going to give you this private data that only we have, and we're going to put that to use to provide answers that only we can provide, right? And so they're scrambling to build to use these powerful LLMs, but still make it very specific to their data, to their information, to their to everything they have to offer. So that's kind of the first one. And I think that's a really obvious one. And we see that a lot. The second two I'm going to talk about are kind of more about the technical side of it, right? We're seeing some shifts in how folks are kind of getting data. And I've done this talk several times. I'm not going to go into it here, but we talk about developers utilizing data, and they just want to use the LLM. We add some data to it. We have the LLM do some stuff. And for a long time, we were seeing this pattern of agents, right? Where the LLM would have to it would get an answer, and they would use the agent to get more, and it would just be grinding. But we're seeing this trend leaning towards functions, right? And so, or function calling. And what this does is, rather than having to use an agent to get in and do a lot of the data and come back to the LLM and go and come back and go and come back, What we're asking is the LLM to just say, hey, give me an answer, give me a deterministic answer, which is LLMs are designed to give, non-deterministic, but it says, give me a deterministic answer, and then I'll have the agent do the work. And so it's a much quicker way and more cost efficient way of getting that out. So and I won't go into all the tech behind it, but this function calling idea instead of agents, we're seeing that trend happening. And finally, another big one. This is number 3. That looks like a 1, but it is a 3. Is multi-model, right? And multi-model we can look at a couple of ways. One is a multi-purpose, one model doing multiple things, right? Because it used to be you went to this model to get text, you went to this model to get images, but now we have models that are handling both of those. So kind of this multi-faceted return or artifacts coming out of one model. The second is this use of multiple models, right? And this idea of using the right model or the right tool for the job and say, okay, we're going to use this model to do something. We found that that's a better one. And we see these, it's interesting. I won't throw names out yet, but we see these models kind of flip-flopping. This one's, now this one's jumping. Now this one's jumping. This does this a little better. This does this a little better. And as companies see that, they're starting to fine-tune. We have a great example with TUI. Which is a tour agency out of the UK, where they're actually using Llama to get the text, but they're using and Uma, help me out. What are they using for the second part of it? Do you remember? She's gonna throw it in there.
They are using Anthropic.
That's right. They're using Anthropic Claude. Thank you very much. So they're using Llama to get the text, but using Anthropic to make it more thematic or within their kind of tone that they want to talk. So it's this multi-model idea of getting the best of each of those. That was a little long-winded, but I hope that kind of gives, again, we could go on this forever, but that's the trends I'm seeing.
No, I appreciate that, and all good points. It's so funny, regardless what year you intercept IT, it's been garbage in, garbage out, and using your own proprietary data to make the results even better. I mean, it just makes sense. That was true in early day analytics. It was true in machine learning. It certainly is true with generative AI. And yes, there are some differences in that you have different types of data that generative AI can light up as opposed to the domain specific. But listen, with all the options and all the opportunities, there also come challenges. So I'm going to ask you, Emma, like, what are some of the challenges that some of these choices, sometimes choices can be confusing. Sometimes having all these options can be challenging. What are your customers running into?
Yeah. Before I talk about the challenges, I want to highlight serverless computing is, for customers are primarily using serverless computing for building applications that consume the foundation models. These foundation models could have been deployed in Amazon Bedrock or Amazon SageMaker, Amazon EKS, or even outside AWS. And so I want to talk about particularly the challenges, maybe considerations that revolves around building these applications. First one, we all obviously know the space is new, but it is rapidly evolving. New features and new models are coming to the market regularly. So, like Eric said, this new features like multi-model, models being able to understand both text and images that change the way how we are processing documents. And features like function calling change the way we perceive AI agents or we are going to use AI agents. So, this rapid evolution, that's where we need to be able to react quickly. We need to be building applications that react quickly to the changes. In the second consideration or challenge, Eric mentioned about it, and you also mentioned about it, garbage in, garbage out. Right? If you want these models to generate accurate response, you should be giving them accurate, unbiased, domain-specific information. Yeah, so having a good data architecture is really must. Where like a data lake, where they can periodically review, make sure they have qualitative information, they have good access control, and also sometimes human in the loop is must. And that's a growing pain point for customers because these data typically unstructured data, this is siloed across line of businesses. And the third one I would say is building asynchronous and event-driven applications. For many of us, this is a mind shift change. Building, we have been building synchronous application for years, and in my mind, asynchronous event-driven application is critical for generative AI for two reasons. One, these models are trained with billions of parameters, and so they're going to take time to generate the response. So think about it. If you are using these models for interactive applications like chatbot, this is going to take time to generate response. And this latency is going to be accurate. That's going to result in poor user experience. And the second point is, because of this scale, these models have limited throughput. And so when you are experimenting, which is what many of our customers are, you don't recognize or realize the scaling challenge. But once you go to production, your user base grows, and this becomes a challenge. And that's also going to result in failure, including poor user experience. And the last thing is about interpretability. What I mean by that is being able to identify the root cause of how this particular decision is made, or like finding the lineage of that data. That is something that all, especially enterprise customers, will be looking at. This may be simple or easy to do for document summarization kind of use cases. How about if you're relying on LLM for complex use cases where you're depending on decision making and reasoning support? And so I would say these are some of the challenges, or actually considerations, every developer must be aware of, and they should be making conscious decisions in terms of technology choices or architectural choices, or even design choices.
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack, and I appreciate you running through all of that. And of course, we know serverless has a number of different, attractive qualities as well. You've got cost efficiencies, you've got scalability, you've got rapid time to value. These are all reasons that, of course, people go to the cloud. There's a lot of parallels there. But, Eric, I gave you kind of the high levels, but as it pertains to like Gen AI, is it this the same trajectory? The reason people used, sort of serverless in the cloud one era is going to be the same as what I like to refer to as the cloud two or Gen AI era? Is it the same? Is it the same long tail of reasons, or what's really driving people to go serverless with their Gen AI projects?
Yeah, I would say yes, and then some, right? So yes plus maybe is my answer.
Yeah.
You
Good
know,
answer.
you have
I like that.
you like that? All right, we'll move
Yes
on.
plus.
So kind of that yes plus answer is serverless accelerates building applications, right? We've seen this in how fast, and I can sit down at my laptop and I can get a Lambda function with an API up and going in roughly 5 minutes, depending on how bad I fat finger, right? But yeah, maybe that's a hello world, but I've taken a lot of the I gotta provision a server, I gotta put the RAM in, I gotta put I can't even name some of the things that go into servers now because I've been doing serverless so long, and we can quickly move. It's very very fast. But the other aspect is, yes, you can come up fast with serverless, and the same applies to Gen AI. When we're building endpoints, when we're building, and again, I go back to the story, and it's my opinion. I have no data behind this, but it's my opinion that 97, 99, whatever percent of developers are mostly consuming Gen AI. They're not the ones training models, so to speak. We have a lot of people doing that as well, but developers are usually consuming. So they have to prepare data going in, and they have to use the data coming out. And so this how do you orchestrate that data? How do you handle that data? It's just like any other application we're building, right? We're moving data around, we're responding, we're manipulating, doing all those kinds of things. So serverless really makes sense here, the flexibility of it, how fast you can come up. But the next step of that is this evolvability. And I'm not sure that's a word, but we'll use it for the moment. The evolvability of serverless. How quickly can I change from, okay, a Lambda function made sense here, but now if I'm doing a lot of orchestration in my code, so I think I'm going to go to a step function. Well, it's not taking down racks and stacks. It's changing my infrastructure. It's changing how that works. And so and we're seeing this a lot as we're seeing different aspects of Gen AI coming in. As it evolves, serverless evolves with it. It's this tool base that said, okay, this is the right tool, this fits there, that makes sense. And so I think those two things, and then you also get into when you're working with Gen AI, you have to handle a lot of data, right? You again, going back to this idea of, look, I'm putting together, so what if I am training, or I'm crunching, or I'm pulling all this in. One of the cool things in the way we've built serverless is it's really well known for the rich integrations into the different services. We have for these are just one of thousands of examples, but if I'm using step functions, I can directly integrate with SageMaker. I can directly integrate with Bedrock. I can directly integrate with Lambda functions and so many other things. I can kick off batches. I can do all kinds of things without having to code for that. So, and literally, as we've got it to a drag and drop, and you just configure it, and off you go. And so as this evolves, I can quickly say, oh, you know what, this needs to happen first. Let's change that order. Let's reorchestrate that, right? And so it gives us this direct integration, lets us move very, very quickly as we're doing that.
Yeah. So
And
I appreciate
finally,
that.
and I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go right ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you're right.
I
Yeah,
was
you
about to
wait
step
till I'm
over
done
you.
talking, you'll never get a chance. But I'll just throw this in real quick. Finally, the scale. The scale of serverless, the way we can scale up and scale back down is really critical to any app, and even more so when you're building Gen AI apps. It allows us, we can come up and down, and it also serverless. And I said finally, but I will throw this tag in as well. Serverless, it leads the developer to build asynchronously. One of the things with Gen AI is there's a lot of waiting right now, isn't there? We all right. I sent something, and if I don't get an answer back, and we've trained our users that if I don't get an answer back, it's broken. So we kind of, with serverless, it allows you, hey, I acknowledge your request, but I have to wait for a while. And serverless kind of just inherently is asynchronous and allows you to build that architecture quickly, easily, and efficiently.
Yeah, I appreciate you filling in the blanks there, and even you even walked us through some common use cases developers are using serverless for. I'd like to shift to Uma here, and we've got room for one more question. Let's do the double click on one use case. Uma, I'm going to pick RAG because it seems to be a very popular one out there, and maybe dive deeper into how you've seen developers solve RAG with serverless.
Yeah, RAG is also Eric's favorite topic.
Yeah. No, we're going to give this question to you, though. It might be his favorite, but
we arm wrestled for this.
He'll
Yeah.
sit there and he's going to have to sort of just shake a little while he wants to talk.
That's right.
Let me start with an intro to RAG. So RAG is basically just very popular these days. It's a popular and cost-effective way to provide LLMs with domain-specific information. As the name says, it has three parts: retrieval, augmentation, and generation. So you have a prompt, you retrieve relevant data for that prompt, you augment the prompt with the retrieved data, and then ask the LLM to generate. Obviously, it's going to give you more accurate response because you've augmented it with relevant information. To me, the retrieval part is like really, really important. It actually happens at a database, and that's typically a vector database. And it's not just one document stored in that vector database, it's a large amount of documents stored in that vector database. Customers typically run like a pipeline, it's called RAG pipeline, to build this database. And this pipeline consists of like many steps. It generally starts from sourcing the document from many different places. Eric talked about integration, rich integration. So serverless rich integrations helps here. So you source documents from many places, and then you iterate on these documents, and then you create or transform the data to image or text format, because that's what is understandable by the embedding model that's going to create that vector data. And the transformation is important because this data is unstructured data. This is audio file, video file, PowerPoint presentation. So you transform the data and you use an embedding model to generate the vector data, and you store that vector data into a database, and it doesn't stop there. You also need to validate this new data is now giving you more accurate response. So there is also a validation step. As you can see, there is a number of steps in this process, and these are distinct steps, but they need to be orchestrated in a sequence. And so our customers use AWS step functions for orchestration. And Eric talked about number of benefits of AWS step functions, but I want to call out two features that why customers choose for building RAG pipeline. Number one is, like I talked about, like vast amount of data, so you need to be able to iterate on that data effortlessly. And you also have to manage concurrency, because managing concurrency is important here, because you don't want to inundate these model or the vector database with too many requests. So customers use step functions distributed map to iterate on these documents, and they also can manage concurrency with that. And the number two is, this is like, scale of this document is like really vast. What happens if there is a failure at when you're processing like 1,000th file? Now, if you're writing it as like a program and running it in an EC2 instance, would you restart this processing for all the 100,000 files that you are processing? Failures are natural, and especially when you're dealing with the data. And so step functions offers very sophisticated failure handling, even being able to handle failures from the time of failure, or from where the file or like whatever the processing that failed, right? Yeah, so I think those are the two reasons. But I also want to call out, RAG is not an answer for everything, right? You can augment from various other ways as well. For example, you may be having like dynamic data, like inventory or like price, or those kind of information better comes from API than RAG.
Totally. Yeah. All like RAG might be the panacea for most, but it doesn't fix everything, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Dan.
No, I mean, look, you gave the playbook, and the playbook is there are these various sort of best understood use cases. I think we are still in the infancy. I think what we all agree from an opportunistic standpoint is finding the way to pair the power of a large language model, whether that is Anthropic or any of the others that we've discussed here, and really put your high value proprietary data to use remains the killer workload right now for so many businesses. The techniques, RAG and fine tuning and the combinations of these things are all going to continue to evolve. And hopefully, technologies like AWS has and serverless computing either financially makes it more available, makes it lower barrier of entry for people to take advantage of these capabilities. And of course, as many of our enterprises are aware, we don't maximize our data. Generative AI and these tools can get us there. We could talk about this for a long time, but Eric and Uma, we do have to run. I did want to say thank you both. I like the amount of detail and preparation that you put into this. Clearly, you're doing this every day, and the world needs to hear about that. The world needs to hear about not just how this can work, but how it is working. Because I do believe, and I think Pat would agree, that AI is one of the most formidable and important inflection points in our lifetime, and it's only going to get faster from here. So we'll keep talking. Eric, Uma, hope to have you back on the show sometime soon. Thanks so much for joining us here on the 6-5.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, hit that subscribe button. You are here with the 6-5. We are on the road. This is part of a multi-part AWS serverless 6-5 series. Stick with us. We appreciate you tuning in. See y'all later.